Yes, I am fully aware of how tremendously late this video is, but I thought that it is better to post it than not at all. I'm sure there's someone out there who's still decorating, and if not, you can save it for next year. You might still just enjoy watching it just for the fun of it, hopefully. I am going to be taking you along with me as I decorate my living room. This is part 2 of my holiday decor series. First part you can catch on my channel where I decorated my dining room and kitchen. And now we are getting into the more glitzy, glamorous, Victorian-ish is what I'm calling Christmas that I'm trying to bring into this room. I'm starting off by making these beaded garlands. These beads are pretty inexpensive. It takes a little bit of time to string them together, but I wanted a ton of beaded garlands since I have a gigantic stairwell that I want to cover completely. I'm using black and brass spray paint and creating this faux aged brass look. I'm doing the same with a bead strand that I spray painted completely gold, and then I'm using some paints on my gloves that I already was using to massage the darker tones into it and create that aged gold look. Very same process I am using here to transform these typical icicles that you see around this time of year and make them look a little bit, fit in with the aesthetic a little bit better. So here is the stairwell that I am trying to create this garland on. It is a big space. This garland is gigantic. I started off by stretching the entire thing and then going back and removing my thumbtacks and nails to create ease so that it looked a little bit more natural. Easy way to set up a garland on your own in those 2 steps. Everywhere that the garland is highest, I'm adding these little clusters of DIY vintage bells. I show how I made these bells in my last video, part 1, that you can catch. And I also show the blog post of which I got this inspiration from. To hang these up, I actually had a bunch of these hooks for ornaments left over, and I bent them in half and created a hook that made it really easy to attach them with thumbtacks. Now that I have my garland and my beads all set up, I'm going to go in and add these icicles. I use the strands that already came in the package to create 2 different lengths so that I can have a little bit of visual interest and make sure that all these ornaments aren't completely lined up with each other. And now we're gonna get into making some DIY ornaments. So I have tasked myself with trying to make all of my own ornaments. Last year, I actually didn't decorate at all. There was no tree, there was no nothing. And so I felt like I really wanted to make this year special. And part of why this video is so delayed is that trying to DIY everything yourself is a little psychotic, and it takes a really long time, especially when you're starting from nothing. We got this house a couple years ago, and I have a video on the first ornaments that I made, and it takes time, and it's okay. Next year is going to be a lot quicker, I promise. But this first ornament that I'm working on is a fabric-inspired ornament. I have so much scrap fabric from my sewing projects, and so I thought this was a really clever way to use the fabric that you might have left over for who knows whatever projects. Always hold on to your fabric. That's a big thing I'm always talking about. I'm just using a glue gun and folding these little squares that I cut. This next ornament is going to be my take on the honeycomb ornaments, which I think are absolutely lovely. But when I went to Joann's, I had a near heart attack looking at how expensive these sheets of cardstock are. They're like 80 cents, and I know I have to be cutting out a bajillion little circles, so I felt like I have napkins. Napkins are significantly cheaper. They are flimsier, they don't look as crisp, but I think that it was good enough when you see it on an entire tree. So you're going to cut some circles all the same size. I did different sizes of ornaments, but for one ornament all the same size, and apply Mod Podge around the edge. A little bit of glitter helps to seal up the napkin since there's so many different layers of it, and it adds a little bit of extra glitz and glamour. You're going to fold each circle in half, and then taking a very thin line of glue, you're going to go down the middle, sandwich it together. You want to do this process and do the halves all at once instead of doing everything all together, because they will start to stick to each other. So after you have all your halves and they're dried, you take each half and glue them to each other by doing a strip at the top and at the bottom. For smaller ornaments, it's about like a 1/4 inch, and then you just do that kind of ratio accordingly to the larger circles that you might get. Now in order to create the sphere, you're going to go ahead and add a little bit more glue towards the middle. You're going to add a ribbon or whatever you want to use to hang your ornament, and then add those 2 lines about 1/4 of an inch from the top and bottom again so that you finish up the chain. Now, since this little bit has a bit more tension, I use some hair clips to clip those wet portions in place until they dried. I also did have a little bit of black cardstock on hand, and I decided to make a couple other ornaments with that as well. This next ornament is super easy, and it looks like concrete, if I'm honest. I love the juxtaposition of harsher, edgier elements alongside softer ones when it comes to design and decor. And I was honestly inspired by the stucco that I made on my witch's house for Halloween. I loved that textural element, and I thought with some black matte paint it would look really awesome. So I'm taking a little bit of Mod Podge and completely covering my ornament, and then sprinkling over some baking soda. I let it fully dry and then try to dust off as much of it as I can. It doesn't matter if there's still a little bit left, the paint will work just fine. This next ornament is a glitter spread web ornament. I always will love spider webs. I use them everywhere. And you're going to water down a little bit of Mod Podge so that it is very runny. It allows you to work in larger sections, and your glue isn't going to dry out very fast. And it also helps with smoother lines, in my opinion. Once you've drawn on your design, I start off by doing these sections again to make sure that everything is perfectly symmetrical. And then you're going to sprinkle some glitter, let it dry, and you can dust it off with a dry paintbrush. I decided to also use some more statement ribbon. I'll link the Etsy shop I got this from down below to create bows for the tree. I also wanted to add ribbon to each one of the ornaments. I thought that it would add a really beautiful interest. I used velvet, copper, black, red, all sorts of colors and textures just to add a little bit more visual interest. I also made some ribbon out of some chiffon. If you just tear it, chiffon tears on the grain. It's very easy, inexpensive DIY ribbon. This next DIY is going to be a very slight twist to these twine balls that I see as a DIY pretty often around this time of year, and I think they're super cute, but I was looking for something else to do in my decor. My mom was showing me these beautiful pictures of these ornaments that they make in the Dominican Republic. I'm a very proud daughter of 2 Dominican immigrants, and any opportunity that I have to pay homage to that beautiful culture, I'll take it. And these balls, and they make deer and all sorts of awesome sculptures out of twigs. I felt twigs would be a little bit ambitious, so I went the route of twine. You mix equal parts of flour and water. I did 1 cup. And used up a little bit of jute twine that you can find very inexpensive. Hint, go look at the hardware section over the craft section at your store, because for some reason it is cheaper. It's kind of annoying, but it is. And you are going to wrap it all around a balloon. Once it's fully dried, about 12 to 24 hours, you can pop the balloon. I try to loosen it a little bit first by pushing on the balloon ever so slightly to make sure that it doesn't concave when I pop it. You can do a little bit of cleaning also to make sure that any of the flour mixture isn't making things look weird. Now, I bought this really beautiful garland online. It was a little bit of an investment, but I figured that I could have it for many, many, many years to come. It hurt my soul to do this, but it was a way to take a garland that was too small, make it appear longer, but it also works because our mantle, we have this melted candle display that I created for my Halloween decor, and it's gonna stay around all year round. And I thought it would be nicer to have the greenery on either side, because there's no point of having it behind the candles. You can't see it, and it's just wasted garland. I also bought these sprigs that are absolutely stunning, and I thought that I would have to use them on our mantle, but our mantle, again, isn't very large. It's not even attached to anything, so I don't want to put anything too heavy, and I decided it didn't really need it. So I decided to make a little arrangement instead. I'm using this vase and just already had some of that, whatever the styrofoamy stuff that you used for arrangements in it, and I stuck them all in there and added some pine cones with some greenery wire. This vase I used for my Halloween decor, and I had to remove the vase every night to make sure my kittens wouldn't get to it, but if you have cats, you know that they get to everything regardless, and they broke it. And so if you look really carefully, it's a little crooked because I had to use epoxy, and because it was very top heavy, it dried crooked, so now I have a crooked vase, but that's okay, at least I can still use it. Also, I had these really cute lanterns that came with our house, and lanterns and all that just feels very Victorian to me, and I thought that it would be a really beautiful touch along with this bronze ribbon to add to the mantle. I'm using clear command hooks to attach these to the mantle. I also bought a couple more prints that are more Victorian Christmas themed to replace my Halloween prints from last season. I found these actual Victorian posters for like concerts. I can't remember now off the top of my head what they were, but I loved the fonts and the look of all of them, and I think that it's a really fun way to just jazz up your gallery walls and just add some fresh element that every season you can kind of swap them out and then you use them year to year. I decided I had so many extra pine cones from when I went and foraged them that I stuck a bunch into the mantle along with some lights. Now that these twine balls are completely spray painted red, I'm using some red ribbon to tie some very large loops. I'm making sure that all of them are at different heights as well, just so that it doesn't look too perfect. Using a drill to make it easier to attach these hooks, and that way I have a jumping off point for adding beads and this ribbon and all these other elements that I'm doing here. Thank you so much for joining me in this video. I hope that you really loved it. If you did, please subscribe and hit the like button, and I hope that you enjoy the reveal.